Discover the incredible journey of faith. 7 amazing lessons to trust God when others doubt you. Sarah stared out the window at the rain-soaked streets, the rhythmic patter against the glass drowning out the whispers of uncertainty that had begun to seep into her mind. How had she allowed herself to become so entangled in others' doubts? The smell of freshly baked pies wafted from the diner down the street, a comforting reminder of the small-town charm that used to fill her with pride. Yet today, all she felt was the heavy weight of disappointment boiling beneath the surface. She had dedicated over a decade to her students but had been passed over for the teaching award she believed she earned, a prize that felt like a stamp of validation against an increasingly critical EYE.I in her heart. Sarah carried her grandmother's teachings, words of faith that had once guided her like a flashlight in the dark. Trust in God's plan, she could hear her echoing admonitions. But what if that plan meant facing rejection? Ominous thoughts tightened their grip around her as co-workers' murmurs mirrored her internal strife. Did they not see her commitment? Were they right to question her abilities after years of toil? At home, her hands trembled as she sorted through old papers, seeking solace in the past. It was then she stumbled upon a dusty envelope, yellowed with age, revealing a family secret that altered the course of her introspection. A scholarship fund, established by her beloved grandmother to uplift underprivileged children hidden away like a fragment of a life unsung. It was an electric jolt, igniting something within her, a glimmer of purpose amidst a storm of turmoil. Determined to honor her grandmother's legacy, Sarah envisioned a community campaign that would bring her dream to life. Yet, as she navigated the red tape of the local school system, unyielding resistance met her at every turn. Authority figures shot down her plans. They were impractical, they said, dreams best left unrealized. Each denial felt like a quiet confession of her inadequacy. Tension tightened around her, a noose she struggled to loosen. Would she be able to shake off this defeatism that loomed over her? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she readied herself for the upcoming town hall meeting, questions spiraled. Could one voice really make a dent in this sea of doubt? She stood face to face with her grandmother's photo. The figure that once provided unwavering support now felt like a distant star, eclipsed by cloud shadows of apprehension. The stakes were high. The urgency thrummed in her chest. Standing before those skeptical eyes, questioning her motives and commitment, was both a cause of dread and a chance at clarity. Sarah's heart raced as she anticipated the moment she would reveal her grandmother's dreams sewn into her very being. And yet there, from the back of the room, a voice rose up, challenging her sincerity. The room shifted uneasily, and in that suffocating moment she could feel the weight of doubt pressing down as memories of past struggles clawed at her resolve. Would they ever understand? Desperation tightened its grip, and the answer felt as elusive as the rain that blurred her vision, threatening to drown her spirit before she could even fight back. The day dawned heavy with clouds, mirroring Sarah's turbulent heart. She sat at her kitchen table, facing an assortment of notes and half-formed ideas, visions of a brighter future struggling for a voice amidst the chaos of her mind. Doubts gathered like storm clouds. Would her campaign even matter? As she considered the stakes, the words she had written, full of passion and purpose, felt inadequate against the clamoring negativity. In a moment of clarity, she rose and squared her shoulders, deciding that instead of spiraling into despair, she would channel the turmoil into resolve. A deep breath filled her lungs, and she thought of her grandmother, a steadfast woman who had faced challenges with unwavering grace. Her legacy was not merely a fund to assist children, it was a challenge to find the strength to uplift others in the face of adversity. That evening, Sarah spent hours refining her speech for the town hall meeting. It was no longer just about a scholarship fund, it became a message of empowerment. She aimed to inspire, to resonate quietly with those in the room struggling with their own doubts. Each sentence was crafted to highlight the tenacity that propelled her grandmother's vision and her own renewed commitment to education. The next morning, she rehearsed in front of the mirror, each word more vibrant than the last as she infused her essence into the narrative. Sarah practiced eye contact, no longer shying away from confrontation. She imagined those skeptical gazes reflecting understanding instead of doubt. At the town hall, the atmosphere buzzed with an undercurrent of skepticism. As she approached the podium, her heart thudded in her chest, but with each step, she felt the weight of the past heavy in her throat, transforming into a fierce fire within. To her shock, she found herself glancing back at her grandmother's photograph resting on a dusty shelf. Its imposing presence felt like a comforting embrace, urging her to speak her truth. Today, I stand not just as a teacher, but as a beacon for our community's potential, Sarah began, her voice resonating with hardness and clarity. She shared anecdotes highlighting the impact of education on her students' lives. She recalled their laughter, dreams, and the resilience that enabled them to overcome obstacles uniquely. In that moment, she was more than someone seeking approval. She became a conduit for the countless dreams within her classroom. Yet just as the tide of her self-assurance began to swell, that familiar voice interrupted a colleague whose doubts rained down like sharp arrows aimed precisely at her heart. "What makes you think you can lead this? You have to ask yourself if you truly believe in this vision." The words ricocheted within her, igniting a defensive impulse. But where once she would have been crushed, a new strength radiated. "I believe in the power of change," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "Perhaps what we've overlooked is how each child's potential mirrors our own. My grandmother entrusted me with a legacy, one that whispers of hope." The room murmured, tension thick, fueled by a mix of disbelief and curiosity. She had reframed her narrative, confronting not only the external doubt of others but the lingering insecurities within herself. Sarah stepped away from the podium, heart racing but vision clearer than ever. The seeds of doubt remained in the air, yet they felt less suffocating. Staring at the walls surrounding her, she knew this conversation was only the beginning. She was not done pushing. As applause erupted, she sensed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Glancing at her opponents, she saw cracks in their defenses. What surprises might lie ahead as she delved further into this fight for her vision? Sarah had crossed the threshold. The question flickered in her mind: was she willing to fully embrace the possibility of her grandmother's dreams, even if it meant defying expectations and facing deeper challenges? The moment of truth was approaching, and Sarah felt the call of destiny whispering her name. In the days following the town hall meeting, Sarah found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. The standing ovation had felt exhilarating, yet unsettling. She had faced the challenger head-on, but now, what did it all mean in the grand scheme of her goals? She grappled with her growing realization that public speaking was just the initial step. Leading a meaningful initiative was a journey filled with deeper obstacles. Determined to harness her momentum, she began identifying potential allies within the community who shared her vision. Each conversation with supportive local leaders instilled a newfound resolve, igniting sparks of connection. Sarah's confidence elevated, not just in speaking, but in listening to the dreams and ideas of others. However, the challenges soon became palpable. One morning, an email from the school board arrived that made her heart sink. Doubts echoed once more as she read through their formal concerns regarding logistics and budget constraints. These weren't merely obstacles, they embodied the very skepticism she had faced before. Could her aspirations withstand the scrutiny of those holding the reins? Clenching her fists, she recognized that falling back into despair was not an option. She sifted through the critiques meticulously, determined to find constructive elements that could help her shape her project further. In doing so, she discovered a hidden talent for negotiation. She believed that adjustments could transform limitations into opportunities. Instead of merely defending her proposal, she began reworking the strategy, framing it in terms of mutual benefits to the board and the students. She scheduled a meeting with key stakeholders, preparing herself not just to present her plan, but to meet their concerns head-on. On the day of the meeting, as she walked into the sterile conference room, doubt tried to creep back in. But Sarah steadied her breath and recalled the faces of her students, those who inspired her to pursue this vision. Their hopes were the foundation of her resolve. "You mentioned concerns around funding and implementation," she said, voice steady, casting her gaze around the table. "Let us discuss those specifically. I've drafted a refined budget and outlined potential partnerships with local organizations that could chip in resources." She anticipated resistance, knowing skepticism was part of the game. Yet, as she spoke, she could feel herself soothing the tension like a balm. The questioning ceased, and the board members leaned forward, intrigued. They began asking not just about the ins and outs of her plan, but more profoundly about the broader impact it could have on the community. In that moment, she felt a shift. She was no longer merely a teacher advocating for a fund, she had become a collaborator with a vision, someone whose voice might just carve a path through the noise of doubt. As they discussed further, Sarah unearthed the latent skill of adapting her narrative to resonate with each board member's concerns, transforming apprehension into possibility. The more she engaged, the stronger her belief became that she was meant to lead this endeavor. The foundation of her grandmother's legacy was taking shape not only through words but through tangible actions. After the meeting, she left feeling invigorated, but her mind buzzed with questions. Would her revised strategy gain approval? Would they understand her passion came from a genuine place? The exhilaration quickly morphed into a nagging worry. Doubt had a way of resurfacing when least expected. A shadow of uncertainty loomed, reminding her that courage was often not just about standing in front of others, but also about facing herself. But before she could spiral back, she paused, recognizing this was merely another layer in her growth. With her next steps forming a roadmap in her mind, she took a moment for herself, allowing the anticipation to swell. What would she do if they approved her project? What would be her next challenge? As she contemplated her journey, the next phase of her greater mission began to unfold. In her thoughts, laden with promise yet shadowed by the unknown, perhaps it was time to tap deeper into the community, seeing what resources lay untapped. Sarah felt the call to action tugging her forward, but what would that entail? The anticipation of another turning point sent a thrill through her, igniting the reality of just how far she was willing to push. The days following the meeting raced by, each afternoon filled with the echoes of doubt mingling with flashes of enthusiasm. Just as she had steeled her resolve, she found herself again facing the fear that lurked beneath her newfound conviction. Waiting for the approval from the school board had morphed from an anticipated moment of triumph to a suspenseful countdown filled with what-ifs. Sarah focused on her students, envisioning their faces lighting up with enthusiasm when they learned about the new opportunities that might soon unfold. This vision, however, was coupled with the anxiety of possible failure. Shaking her head, she refused to let that paralyze her. Instead, she needed to act. Action had become her bridge over troubled waters. Utilizing the connections she had forged with community leaders, she organized a brainstorming session at her local cafe, a cozy establishment with worn wooden floors and walls laced with community art. She invited a handful of enthusiastic teachers, local business owners, and a couple of parents whose insight she had come to value. As they gathered around mismatched tables, Sarah brought up her project, heart racing as she shared her vision. As she spoke, something unexpected happened. Instead of merely presenting her ideas, she encouraged contributions, emphasizing collaboration as a critical element of the initiative. Ideas flew around the room. One teacher suggested leveraging local artisans for workshops, while a business owner proposed a sponsorship that could alleviate funding woes. Each suggestion sharpened her perspective. The initiative was beginning to shift from a solitary pursuit into a collective ambition. Paradoxically, Sarah felt the tension ease with every collaborative suggestion. She realized that while she aimed to lead, listening and adapting were equally important. The energy in the cafe transformed as enthusiasm swept through the group, illuminating possibilities that she hadn't considered. Her mind buzzed with plans as she scribbled ideas into her notepad, excitement eclipsing doubt. However, a lurking question weighed heavily on her: was she truly capable of handling this collaborative endeavor when doubt threatened to overshadow her confidence? Each new connection and idea challenged her, demanding that she navigate not only her own ambitions but also the diverse wills and ideas of others. She felt a tightening in her chest, a flicker of fear that if she mismanaged the group's enthusiasm, it could all spiral out of control. But just as her anxiety threatened to take root, she identified a stream of strength swelling within her. Reflecting on the meeting with the school board, she acknowledged her own growth, recognizing that leadership was about empathy and adaptability, not just command. The acknowledgement propelled her into action, fostering resilience in the face of vulnerability. The brainstorming session culminated in a palpable excitement. Sarah proclaimed, "Let us each take one idea and refine it together in smaller groups. We will bring these to the next board meeting." The enthusiasm around the room buoyed her spirits and shattered the clouds of doubt. This was not just her mission, it was theirs. As the group disbanded, Sarah's heart raced with unanticipated motivation. Yet the uncertainties loomed large. Would the school board appreciate this more holistic approach? What if their concerns resurfaced? In the depths of her mind, a new layer of dread took hold, questioning whether the voices of the passionate community that had driven her initiative were strong enough to silence the board's skepticism. Just as she began to spiral into doubt, a text pinged from one of the board members, a subtle nudge of encouragement that she hadn't foreseen. Was this small gesture a sign of things to come? Could it point toward acceptance or even excitement about the project? With the clock ticking down to the board's next meeting, Sarah felt the adrenaline surging through her. Would she be ready to face them again, this time as a conduit for not just her vision, but that of her community? The stakes felt heavier, and the emerging realization of her role in this collective endeavor sparked a fire of resolve within her. Determined, she set her sights forward, knowing the next steps would require even greater vulnerability and persistence. What awaited her in the boardroom? Would she emerge empowered or shattered? The whisper of unanswered questions lingered in her mind, fueling her anticipation as she prepared for the ultimate confrontation of her intentions and the aspirations of a greater coalition. Sarah spent the next few days in a whirlwind of preparation, her mind swimming with countless strategies and intricate details. Each evening, she reviewed the notes she had taken during the brainstorming session, diligently carving out pathways to transform the raw enthusiasm of the group into coherent strategies. However, as she delved deeper into her plans, doubt crept in, wrapping its tendrils around her confidence. In the quiet solitude of her living room, she repeatedly questioned her capabilities. Was her vision robust enough to capture the school board's attention? What if they dismissed the heartfelt ideas of her collaborators as mere fantasies? Each new apprehension triggered a surge of adrenaline, compelling her to confront the reality of her situation. Diagrams and bullet points filled her whiteboard, but one thought remained stubbornly entrenched in her mind: leadership was meant for natural-born innovators, not ordinary teachers. Yet, she had embraced the challenge of leading a coalition. Her heart raced as she grappled with that inherent contradiction. Who was she to stand as the voice for a diverse group? Closing her eyes against the oppressive doubts, she recognized that her colleagues relied on her to distill their voices into a coherent narrative. A murmur of conviction cascaded through her brain at that moment. This wasn't about her alone. This was about amplifying a collective vision, turning a patchwork of ideas into a harmonious symphony. With that perspective shift, Sarah set to work, a mixture of curiosity and fortitude guiding her. She invited collaborators to join her in refining their concepts, embracing the idea that their strength lay in unity. As the day of the board meeting approached, her focus sharpened. The rational part of her told her preparation meant excellent outcomes, yet a pit of unease still sat at the core of her being. She reached out to the same teachers and parents who had participated in the brainstorming session, asking them to submit brief speeches outlining how their contributions could elevate the program. She believed that even if she stumbled, their enthusiasm would bounce back and lift the initiative higher. The anticipation hung thick in the air, and tension twisted within her. Repeatedly, she practiced her presentation in front of the mirror, watching her reflection as she spoke the words. But even then, a sense of fragility colored her voice. In stark moments of self-doubt, she questioned the strength of her vision, aching for assurance that her credibility as a leader would hold against the scrutiny of seasoned board members. Finally, the day arrived. Clad in her best attire, an invigorating shade of green that symbolized growth, Sarah stood outside the boardroom, feeling the cool walls of her fears pressing in around her. Each confident stride toward the entrance was laced with a palpable tension in her stomach, a mixture of excitement and dread. The sweeping windows of the room offered a glimpse of the board members engrossed in discussion, their expressions impassive. Taking a deep breath, she gripped the edge of the door with a trembling hand, her heart a drumbeat of anxiety. Moments like this demanded more than just facts or plans. She needed to convey the essence of her mission, that this wasn't merely a proposal, it was a commitment to transformation. With her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm, she stepped inside, the murmurs subsiding as her presence drew attention. She felt each gaze a weighty mixture of scrutiny and expectation, but as she prepared to speak, a flicker of resolve radiated from within, illuminating a path forward. This was her moment, not just to share ideas but to advocate for a cause far greater than herself. What awaited her words? Would her passion ignite hope, or would it falter before the board's apprehension? As she began, recalling the dreams of her students intertwined with the rapture of community support, the stakes crystallized. This was no longer merely an opportunity. It was a test of her ability to inspire change, rooted in vulnerability and courage. Would she be able to transform fear into purpose, or would the weight of expectation crush her resolve? The silence settled around her, heavy with possibility, as she forged ahead. Would she shatter through the barriers of doubt, or would they stand unyielding, dismissing her vision as mere aspirations? The moment Sarah began to speak, her words rushed forth like a dam breaking under pressure, fueled by years of unspoken hopes and dreams. The tremor in her voice gave way to a quieter steadiness, the surge of adrenaline focusing her thoughts. She painted vivid pictures with her language, images of students thriving, connected to a network of support that was more than just a system but a lifeline. The boardroom, once an imposing arena of doubt, transformed into a canvas for her vision. As she spoke, a sense of empowerment ignited within her. The doubts that had haunted her in solitude, those questions whispering that she was not good enough, began to dissolve. Instead, a steady confidence took root, nourished by the very idea she had helped to cultivate with her colleagues. Each slide of her presentation sparked a response in the faces before her, revealing glimpses of curiosity and intrigue. She methodically laid out the structure of their initiative, clearly articulating the necessity behind each element. Each proposal wasn't just an abstraction. It was imbued with the real-life experiences of her fellow teachers, and the eager aspirations of her students. As she introduced testimonials from parents and teachers, their authentic voices, complete with genuine emotion, became part of her own. The weight of her earlier isolation began to shift. She was no longer just Sarah, the teacher. She was the voice of many, a conduit through which their ambitions flowed. Midway through her presentation, she sensed a shift in the room. The board members, who initially appeared indifferent, leaned slightly forward. One member, a woman with sharp features and a reputation for her skepticism, was scribbling notes. Another, a man known for his critical perspective, nodded almost imperceptibly. With every passing moment, the fear of dismissal morphed into a glimmer of hope. Yet, doubt still lingered at the edges of her consciousness. What if her fervor didn't translate into action? What if they remained tethered to their outdated beliefs, unable to envision the change she championed? Swallowing those fears, she focused on a single guiding thought: her commitment to champion the best future for her students. By the time she concluded, infusing purpose into her final words, she felt a surge of vulnerability mingled with strength. This is not merely a plan, it's a promise. A promise that our students will not just survive but thrive. Silence enveloped the room, the air charged with anticipation. As she stepped back, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation coursed through her veins. The board members began to deliberate, their murmurs fading into the background. In that moment of limbo, Sarah could do nothing but await their verdict. She clung to the hope that her words ignited even a flicker of recognition within them, something that would illuminate the path toward change. But as their deliberations unfolded, a wave of uncertainty crashed over her once more. Would they appreciate the passion behind her mission? Would they see more than just her moment of courage? Suddenly, A familiar voice cut through her thoughts. The board's president addressed her. Tell us more about how this initiative will be sustainable long term. The question hung in the air, a challenge laden with implications. This was not the question she had anticipated. It veered sharply into a realm of accountability, a demand for further transparency. The resolve she had mustered began to waver under the sudden responsibility of the moment. She recognized that this was a pivotal crossroads, a test of both her vision and her ability to adapt. With the eyes of the board upon her, a renewed determination sparked within Sarah. She could either shrink back in this moment of deep inquiry or embrace the challenge head-on. The stakes were high, and for the first time, she understood the significance of this inquiry. It was a call to demonstrate not only her vision, but her capability to lead its execution. What would she say? How could she effectively convey her strategy in a way that satisfied their concerns? Would her next words solidify belief in her vision, or would they expose her vulnerabilities yet again? As she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the response, she felt the weight of not just the proposal but the burden of expectation. The path to her growth as a leader crystallized with each heartbeat. This was the moment that would define her journey. But then came the unsettling thought. Beyond this encounter lay deeper challenges, ones that could reshape everything she held dear. What awaited her next? Taking a moment to gather herself, Sarah felt the weight of expectancy in the boardroom pressing down like a physical force. How on earth could she convey the intricate details of sustainability without losing the momentum she had built? Thank you for the question, she began, her voice steadier than before, laced with purpose. Sustainability is not just a concept, it's the bedrock upon which our vision stands. To be truly effective, we need to integrate our initiative into the very fabric of our school's culture. She launched into a series of tactical elements: partnerships with local organizations, engagement with community stakeholders, and training sessions for staff that would ensure everyone was invested and equipped. As she spoke about the potential for mentorship from alumni, she could see the board members leaning in, curious and engaged. Yet, amid this rising sense of progress, a seed of doubt burgeoned within her. Was she merely glossing over the complexities? Numbers and strategies swirled in her mind, but she couldn't ignore the nagging worry that the board would see through any superficial optimism. They had, after all, seen countless initiatives fail to achieve their lofty goals. Further, she continued, taking a calculated breath, we will implement feedback mechanisms. Teachers, students, and parents will have a voice in how our program evolves. This ensures we remain nimble and responsive, adapting to the needs as they arise. But just as she felt the tide of confidence rising, another anxiety gripped her. Would they actually trust her judgment, or would skepticism overshadow her data? What if they deemed her attempts at transparency as inadequate? As the board members exchanged glances, Sarah could almost hear the internal dialogues occurring within them. But instead of retreating back, she fortified her resolve. The fear that had once stifled her speech transformed into a driving force. This was not just about her. This was about the students, about a future that depended on their succeeding. The key is that, unlike previous initiatives, we are committed to this long-term vision. We are not coming in with quick fixes but with a comprehensive, evolving plan that requires ongoing investment of our time and resources. We will celebrate small wins and adjust based on real-time feedback. Each word emerged from her with renewed vigor, and she could see the board members assessing her, perhaps even contemplating the validity of her claims. But lurking in the back of her mind was another layer of concern: the funding. One board member, a firm skeptic, opened his mouth to challenge her next comment, and Sarah braced for the inevitable pushback. How do you intend to finance such a large-scale initiative? It sounds ambitious, but how realistic is it really? His tone, as challenging as it was, sparked a flash of determination within her. It was the very push she needed to go deeper. Instead of dancing around the subject, she dived straight into the statistics of potential funding from grants, philanthropic efforts, and innovative fundraising ideas. Here was a moment not just to defend her vision but to exploit the catalyst of doubt into a driving force of clarity. As she concluded her counterpoint, she felt exhilarated. A rush of empowerment surged through her. But even then, a part of her remained on alert. The road ahead was still fraught with doubt and unknown challenges. There were elements she hadn't even begun to address, and she was acutely aware that she was still under scrutiny. The atmosphere shifted again, palpable with suspense as her words settled. What had started as a tender vision was slowly solidifying into a concrete proposal that hinted at the deeper complexities of leadership and innovation. If she could just keep this momentum, keep proving to them and herself that she possessed the vision necessary to navigate the impending challenges. Then again, beyond this tumultuous moment lay uncertainties unwritten and perhaps confrontations that would cut deeper than anything she faced today. What awaited her was not merely the boardroom's approval or disapproval. There was a harder test on the horizon, one that would question her resolve, her values, and the very essence of her ambition. Was she truly ready to confront the darker realities of leadership? The answer loomed just over the horizon, and it beckoned her towards what was next. As Sarah left the boardroom, her exhilaration gave way to a sobering silence. The questions hadn't stopped echoing in her mind, each one a piercing reminder of her own vulnerabilities. How would she manage the expectations now that she'd sown the seeds of this ambitious initiative? Could she truly carry it through? Taking a deep breath, she walked the brightly lit halls of the school, the walls adorned with student artwork and vibrant posters of past achievements. Every step reverberated with the reality of her commitments, the essence of leadership pressing upon her shoulders. No more theory. This demanded action. In the following days, Sarah immersed herself in discussions with teachers and staff, gathering insights and feedback on the sustainability plan. But each conversation unveiled a mixture of enthusiasm and skepticism, a reflection of her own doubts. The seasoned educators, battle-hardened by years in the system, were curious yet cautious, probing the validity of her proposal and its practical implications. Their questions danced like shadows in her mind, casting doubt on her confidence. "You really think we can shift the culture?" one teacher asked, her brow furrowed. "We've tried before." The remark cut deeper than Sarah anticipated, triggering memories of earlier failed initiatives in the school that had fallen flat under the weight of good intentions. "Absolutely," she responded. Her voice faltered just for a moment before regaining strength. "But this time, we have to align our vision with the needs we see every day. This isn't just another program, it's a commitment." As Sarah navigated these interactions, she began to notice something surprising emerging from within her, an instinctive resilience she hadn't known she possessed. It ignited a fire of determination within her, pushing her to dissect every concern, to explore every question deeply. No longer were these challenges mere obstacles. They became opportunities, a chance to rethink, revamp, and innovate her approach. Fostering this newfound strength, Sarah dedicated herself to the task of creating comprehensive informational sessions. She invited experts in sustainable practices to address the staff, providing a wealth of knowledge that those in her school could tap into, transforming skepticism into curiosity. However, the closer she got to solidifying the plan, the heavier the funding concerns loomed. Each conversation with potential donors felt like a chess game, where every word held the weight of her visions and potential outcomes. The disappointment from the board member's pointed questions seeped into her bones, and she needed to craft a convincing narrative that made financial sense. "Let's make this more dynamic," she thought. "I can't rely solely on grants. What can we create that draws in people's passions?" This thought inspired her to devise an engaging outreach strategy. Instead of cold solicitations, she envisioned hosting community events that highlighted the benefits of sustainability, showcasing the students' work and inviting participation. This not only appealed to donors' interests, but also built grassroots support, an essential component lacking in previous efforts. Each plan evolved, reflecting her internal transition from doubt to an emerging leadership persona. With every conversation, workshop, and networking session, she began to build her confidence, becoming a conduit for change rather than a passive participant. Yet, as she gained traction, the fear of failure seeped back in, the duality of excitement and apprehension swirled. Would her efforts resonate? Could she turn this tide of cynicism into a wave of support? And looming larger was the reality of the board meeting, where she'd have to present her progress, one fraught with risk but ripe with potential for growth. It struck her, this wasn't merely about the initiative anymore. It was about her metamorphosis into a capable and assertive leader. The weight she felt pressing upon her was transforming the burden of expectation, now a catalyst for her growth. Sarah understood that soon. The board would again examine her vision, eager to dissect her ideas, to challenge her resolve. She felt the intensity building within her, a relentless urge to prove not just to the board, but to herself, that she could stand before them not as a novice, but as an architect of change. As the date of the next board meeting crept closer, a dormant fear unfurled within her mind. What if they still didn't believe in her? The question loomed large, a test of her very identity as a leader, and there was no escaping the confrontation that awaited. Could she summon the courage to look doubt in the eye and rise, not just to the occasion but beyond it? The clock was ticking, and she needed to find that answer before the meeting would rock the foundations she had painstakingly built. The day of the board meeting dawned with an unsettling chill, the kind that gnawed at Sarah's confidence as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blazer. Each small gesture felt monumental, as if they were part of an intricate dance that could either culminate in applause or silence. She was acutely aware of the stakes. The respect of her colleagues hinged on this presentation, as well as the future of the sustainability initiative she had championed. As she made her way to the meeting room, the familiar corridor felt heavy with expectation. The artwork on the walls, once a source of inspiration, now seemed like an unyielding backdrop amplifying her doubts. How had she allowed herself to feel so unsteady? But as she approached the conference door, she urged herself to cast aside those thoughts. This was her moment, one she had prepared for meticulously. Inside the boardroom, faces from across the educational spectrum greeted her, their expressions a blend of curiosity and caution. The tension was palpable. Taking her seat, Sarah surveyed the room. She recognized the smiling nods of support from a few allies, and spotted the skeptical brows of some longtime educators. They would demand clarity. She could not afford to waver. Her heart raced as she began her presentation. The slides she had crafted felt like extensions of her own journey, each bullet point reflecting her transformation from uncertainty to clarity. This initiative is not about imposing change, it's about embracing a new vision for our community, she stated, employing her voice to command presence. Flipping through her slides, she captured attention with compelling statistics and testimonies from the teachers she'd consulted. The reaction was cautiously optimistic, but she was aware that the real test lay ahead. As she reached the financial projections, the room grew quiet, the weight of anticipation pressing down. Sarah had anticipated the questions. How can we justify the costs? What if this doesn't yield the promised results? The voice of a board member she deeply respected rose above the rest, encapsulating the very fears she had battled internally. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. It's a valid concern, she acknowledged, leaning into the question rather than flinching. But we have an opportunity here, a chance to set a precedent in education by investing in our children's future. Her words seemed to slice through the tension, but the path to reassurance was fraught with peril. She could sense the underlying doubts still simmering, waiting to erupt. Responding with analytical precision, she shared her outreach idea again, emphasizing community involvement as a source of funding. If we engage the families and local businesses, this initiative will not just survive but thrive. It transforms into a shared endeavor. The stakes had become crystal clear. This was not merely a presentation. It was a rallying cry to redefine what leadership could achieve through collaboration. Yet even as murmurs of approval began to ripple through the room, a lingering fear wrapped around her like a vine, stifling her burgeoning confidence. What if this wasn't enough? How would she handle it if they still didn't believe? That very night, the weight of her performance settled heavily on her shoulders. A blend of exhilaration and worry churned within her. The possibility of rejection gnawed at her thoughts, unrelenting. Had she achieved what she set out to accomplish, or was she still teetering on the edge of doubt? As she lay awake, a revelation struck her. This was not just a matter of changing minds but also of shifting her own internal narrative. She needed to reconcile the fear that pulsated within her with the tangible success she had created. If she were to embrace this change authentically, it had to begin within. The next day, she resolved to approach the teachers and staff once more, not just as a leader, but as a collaborator willing to hear their concerns and celebrate their triumphs. As she penned her emails, she felt a shift, a deep understanding. Enveloping her leadership was not about asserting power but fostering unity. As the countdown to the board's response began, Sarah now found herself at the crossroads of personal strength and vulnerability. Would the experiences of the past propel her to new heights, or would the specter of doubt continue to shadow her journey? The answers awaited, but she sensed that she was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. That realization sparked a new question. In striving to become a compelling leader, would she ultimately lose sight of the deep connections that had grounded her from the start? The moment Sarah received the email confirming the school board's approval of her initiative, an electric surge of triumph coursed through her veins. She had stood boldly in front of them, her fears laid bare, her vision now validated. Leaving the boardroom that day, she felt not just relief but an indelible sense of accomplishment. The years of self-doubt, of questioning her abilities and worthiness as a leader, had crystallized into clarity. She was no longer merely a teacher fighting against the current. She had become the force driving change. Reflecting on her journey, Sarah recognized the depth of her transformation. The storms of uncertainty that had once clouded her confidence had melted away, revealing a profound inner strength, a resolve fortified by circumstances and nurtured by community support. It no longer mattered if others doubted her. She had cultivated unwavering belief in her purpose and potential. The subsequent weeks unfolded like a promising manuscript. Sarah led meetings with enthusiasm, collaborating with teachers while incorporating feedback from the community. No longer confined to a solitary endeavor, she reveled in the collective energy surrounding her project. As she applied her grandmother's legacy of empowerment to real-world situations, she watched as the initiative took shape and momentum built, nurturing the community she had long dreamed of uplifting. Concrete achievements emerged: workshops, mentorship programs, and scholarships blossomed as results of her leadership. Parent involvement surged, with local business partnerships sprouting up as they recognized the value of what Sarah championed. She obtained essential funding through previously unimagined channels, transforming skeptics into supporters. Each success fueled her confidence, further solidifying her position. Moments of genuine personal connection unfolded: the laughter of students returning to share their achievements, testimonials from parents expressing their gratitude. Sarah's heart fluttered at these acknowledgments. It was a reminder of why she had ventured into this space in the first place. The connection transcended mere professional satisfaction. It rippled through her life, affirming both her dedication and her commitment to nurturing future generations. As a reflection of her growth, Sarah received invitations to speak at local educational forums, her voice resonating with authority and experience. She articulated not only her vision, but embodied the belief that her identity as a teacher was intertwined with her evolution into a leader. With each presentation, she exuded confidence, her words shaping a narrative that drew others in, inspiring them to take similar leaps of faith. The final moment of resolution came unexpectedly during a school assembly, an event honoring her colleagues' and students' achievements. When it was her turn to speak, a flood of emotion filled her as she addressed her peers. She recounted her journey, the hurdles faced, the transformations experienced, and how collectively they could change the course of students' lives. The applause was not merely loud, it echoed against the walls of her past insecurities, marking a definitive chapter of growth and fulfillment. I stand here today not as the teacher you may have known, but as a testament to the power of faith and tenacity, Sarah declared. We can achieve what we pursue when we believe in ourselves and each other. As the applause enveloped her, she felt a warm wave of satisfaction wash over her. Here, at last, stood a woman who had confronted her doubts, conquered her challenges, and emerged as a robust leader, ready to navigate whatever obstacles lay ahead. Praise and validation poured in, but Sarah understood it was the trust she now held in herself that marked her true achievement. She hadn't just proven her abilities to others, she had redefined her internal narrative, forever shifting the course of her life and teaching career. Now was the time to share her journey far and wide, to inspire others who battled self-doubt. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey of faith and resilience. This is your moment to show your support for real personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share.